Okay, so you remember this? A little more than a year ago outside St. Luke's in downtown Boise, a group of people protesting the removal of a child from his parents after he was determined to be malnourished and in imminent danger. The Baby Cyrus protest was organized by the young boy's grandfather, Diego Rodriguez, and his friend, Ammon Bundy, who was also a candidate for governor at the time. The morning after the infant was hospitalized at St. Luke's in Meridian, on March 12th, Ammon Bundy was arrested for trespassing because he refused to leave the hospital. Bundy and his People's Rights Network then organized days of protests at the St. Luke's in Boise, claiming the boy was, quote, medically kidnapped by doctors and Child Protective Services. The protests led to the hospital having to go into lockdown for nearly 2 hours on March 15th of 2022. They had to divert patients to other providers. They wouldn't let anyone into the hospital to visit any of their patients. Then on May 11th of that year, St. Luke's and a couple of their doctors filed a lawsuit against Ammon Bundy and his campaign, Diego Rodriguez and his Freedom Man Press and Political Action Committee, and the People's Rights Network. They claimed there was a concerted effort to disrupt hospital business. They were making false statements about CPS and the hospital and its staff, and they were all attacked online. So the goal of the lawsuit is to stop this harassment and get the false and defamatory stuff posted online taken down, neither of which has happened, which is why attorneys for St. Luke's filed a motion for contempt back in February of this year. They also want a judge to allow them to ask for punitive damages of $7.5 million. Now, during this time, other than pleading guilty to the original charge of trespass at St. Luke's and Meridian, Ammon Bundy has refused to show up or participate in any of the proceedings related to this lawsuit. And it's gotten to the point where the Gem County Sheriff, where Bundy lives, has refused to participate in delivering papers to Bundy, out of fear, he says. So yesterday, St. Luke's filed a writ of mandamus, which is with the Idaho Supreme Court, taking it directly to the state's highest court for the first time to get the sheriff's office to do its duty. The county sheriff is required by Idaho code to deliver all civil court paperwork, the service of process, they call it. That would include, notice of liens, evictions, and lawsuits. Well, today we sat down with the St. Luke's attorney to talk about the case and where it stands now.
We allege in the complaint that Bundy is involved in really a grift, that he's a conflict entrepreneur and he makes money out of marketing these controversies. We strongly believe that while there was a serious incident with this infant that desperately needed medical care, Bundy, Rodriguez, and PRN took that tragic circumstance and turned it into a money-making operation. They ginned up a false conspiracy. They marketed it aggressively. They continue to market it to this day. And we believe that the motivation behind all of it is money. And that's why we call it a grift.
A couple times there have been hearings on this case. It's a civil case, but there have been hearings at court where he has just not shown up. Is that correct?
Yes. Mr. Bundy has never shown up for any of the proceedings, and there's been many.
And so in order to notify him that he must be in court or must answer these questions or even show up for a deposition, you guys have to notify him of this.
That's correct. And it's multiplied based on the fact that he's continuing to harass folks, we believe, and continuing to take wrongful actions, which then precipitate us making another motion to the court to try and get relief. So it's a cycle that we believe Mr. Bundy has created by not showing up and by continuing to act wrongfully.
By continuing, Stidham says, to post pictures and names of those involved in the Baby Cyrus incident online, like on this website run by the child's grandfather, Diego Rodriguez, who's also named in the lawsuit. The other wrinkle to this is in serving all of these papers, you guys have to use the sheriff's office, Gem County Sheriff's Office.
The first problem is, given Mr. Bundy's nature, there's only a small number of private process servers who are willing to take this on from the outset.
What do you mean his nature?
Well, the fact that he threatens and the fact that he doxes. So they're threatened by that, and also threatened by the fact that the man has a history of violent confrontation. So we had a small subset of process servers who were willing to take on the task. And we, of course, used them initially. But some fell out because Bundy threatened them. And then some fell out because Bundy made trespass complaints to the sheriff. Then we did use the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office did help us with process serving. About a week ago, when Mr. Bundy was served with papers by the deputies at the sheriff's office, That became very confrontational.
Which led to this letter from last week, written by the Gem County Sheriff. Sheriff Donnie Wonder said he spoke with Bundy by phone on April 10th, and he told him he felt threatened by all the papers being served on him, and he believes Bundy is at his breaking point. And because of that, Sheriff Wonder says there's a potential for someone getting hurt, a risk he wasn't willing to take over a civil issue.
His concern was for the safety of his deputies, and he took the position that he was no longer going to be assisting in this.
When you don't have access to a private entity to serve these papers, that's kind of the sheriff's job, right?
Well, it's the sheriff's job regardless of whether you have access. That's a statutory duty that's assigned to the sheriff.
So when you see the sheriff say, out of fear of safety, I mean, is that unusual?
It is unusual, and I'll say my clients are very sympathetic to that because we do believe Bundy is violent. But our perspective is, while the sheriff's concerns are legitimate, that his statutory duty requires him to do this, we have the right to proceed in the legal process against Mr. Bundy. And also, given the risk of violence with Mr. Bundy, it should be the sheriff that's handling this.
I've read some of Bundy's stuff, even recently. I mean, he claims he's not a violent person.
He says he's not a violent person, but he'll say something like, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not a violent man, but I'm at my breaking point. There was one video he posted relating to our lawsuit.
And I haven't responded one bit to them. And I have my reasons for not, and we can talk about it if you're interested, but
Yeah.
I haven't responded. I just throw it right in the garbage. But then they have like servers that come here all the time knocking on the door serving papers. They have the Gem County Sheriff's Department coming here all the time knocking, and now they're using FedEx to make deliveries. It's crazy. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. This is one time to the mail. This happens multiple times a week.
Where he said, you know, I'm not a violent man, but if you try and come and collect your money, you're going to meet me and my friends with shotguns.
I'm making moves.
Bundy said this in an interview with the blog Idaho Dispatch.
And if I have to, meet him on the front door with my, friends and shotgun, I'll do that, right? They're not going to take my property.
So he said that. Eric Stidham says Bundy has been served so many times for several reasons. He's named and in charge of several other entities that are also named in the lawsuit, including his campaign, the People's Rights Network, and another business based in Wyoming. And every time he refuses to show up or cooperate, well, that begins a whole other series of filings that then legally have to be delivered to Mr. Bundy. Stidham says with this latest filing, they are asking the state Supreme Court to overturn the Gem County Sheriff's interpretation of Idaho's trespass law to not allow process servers on Bundy's property. They're also asking the court to direct Sheriff Wonder to comply with what they believe is his statutory duty to serve this paperwork. The Gem County Sheriff declined to speak with us today about this case, and our emails and phone calls to Ammon Bundy went unanswered until just moments ago because, well, there was another hearing related to this case in Ada County today. And guess who wasn't there? So the judge is going to issue a warrant of attachment to bring Mr. Bundy in for arraignment on his contempt charge, and his bail was set at $10,000. And Mr. Bundy sent me a text message in response to the phone call that I sent to him. He said, "Did you hear that they issued a warrant for my arrest today? $10,000 bond for not participating in a civil case. Why doesn't the judge just rule that St. Luke's wins the case? They must want more from me than money," is what he said. When I asked him if he was going to surrender or comply, I've yet to see a response. But the plan is Bundy will be taken into custody and brought before a judge. And my question is, and I'm sure your question as well, if that's up to the Gem County Sheriff to do that, I wonder how that's going to go.